So this afternoon's class is advanced training, payroll and timesheets module training. Today I'm going to be showing you just going over a few, well, the one setup item when it comes to running payroll, which is putting in our pay periods. And pay periods are just, the dates that we are collecting information for to pay out our employees. And then after that, I'm just going to run you through, how to go through the payroll process, start to finish. It's actually pretty simple. A lot of people like it because it saves them hours doing payroll. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. So do you currently have your pay periods built in your system or no? Okay, so you have pay periods built. That's good. So actually, we can get right into running payroll. So the first thing we need to do, and by the way, all of our payroll functionality can be found in the Timesheets/payroll menu option in this blue ribbon here. When we click on that, we get our sidebar, and this is really all we need for payroll. And the bulk of the processing payroll is found right here in the processing submenu. Everything else, so processing is where we're going to, kind of check to see what's getting paid. If we need to stop payment for something, it's where we create timesheets, where we can print timesheets, run our payroll export if you have one, and then close out payroll. Close periods. That's referring to pretty much if we ever had to make an adjustment to a time off or overtime entry from a period that has been closed since. So, for instance, if I had a payroll period closed last week and I had to make an adjustment on a time off entry or an overtime entry, I can go back in because when it comes to payroll, once you close a pay period out, you can't reopen it. But you can make adjustments without having to open up a pay period. So here we can go back and adjust previously closed entries. Now keep in mind, it's not going to affect anything, pay-wise. If we had to change hours of an overtime or something like that, you would still have to manually make that adjustment, via your payroll company. But for record-keeping purposes, we can update old entries. Signing timesheets, if your department requires, signatures on timesheets, whether it's from, the employee or the supervisor or the department head, whatever, we can electronically sign those through signing of timesheets. And end of year, that's regarding rollover. For this class, we're not really going to talk about that. We're more focused on just, processing payroll, maybe making some adjustments, things like that. So with that being said, let's go to step one in running payroll. So under the processing menu, the first option is start payroll. The reason why I like the payroll module so much is because when it comes to processing, this list of screens right here, there is an order to them. And what I mean when I say that is we can't do anything in the processing menu before we start payroll, right? So, when processing payroll, you kind of want to go in the steps, in the order of how the screens are listed. So when we click on Start Payroll, it's the first thing we need to do. We need to actually open up the pay period. When we click Start Payroll, it's going to pull up, your whatever pay period that came after the one you just closed, or if you put in your pay periods but you haven't run payroll yet, this is going to open up the first pay period that you've created. And it's just kind of relaying to us the date range that we're about to open. So here we have period start. So in my case, this is going back a little bit, in July. It's just saying, okay, we're about to open from the 18th to the 31st, and we're going to collect all that information that took place in between those dates, and just a calendar view right here. So all we need to do is click Open Pay Period. It says, are you sure you want to open this pay period? Yes, that's fine. Now we see the payroll period has been opened. So now that button is now grayed out. It's open. We can close out. So far, so good. Okay, great. If I lose you at any time, just let me know. You know, because we want to make sure we get this right. Now, when it comes to do you guys use Muster at all? Okay, so when it comes to Muster, if you're not actually using it, you can actually skip over it. We have no Muster to apply, so we're not even going to bother with that particular screen. Now, the next screen, Pay, Unpay, this is where we're going to go to, I kind of refer to this as like a last-minute check of entries. You don't know what Muster is? Not a lot of people do. It's kind of outdated. Muster is referring to pay that people get, like, you know, the first 15 minutes of their shift. They have a, you know, a roll call, debriefing, you know, whatever it is, where they get X amount of dollars for those 15 minutes before every shift. But for the most part now, it's kind of built into their salary. Not a lot of people use Muster anymore. But okay, so with Pay and Unpay, this is referring to, it's kind of like a last-minute check. This is where we can pull up two things. One, we can pull up the time off and overtime entries that have not been fully processed into payroll, meaning they're not going to show up on timesheets. And typically that happens with any entries that are approved with stipulation as opposed to a full approval. So if you do have any entries that have not been marked as approved and only approved with stipulation, those don't actually go into the payroll processing because it's not a full approval. You know, we look at that as like a semi-approval. So whether that's overtime or time off, pretty much we can pull up any entries that are kind of just lingering. They're not going to get processed through payroll. We can either force the process. We can tell the system, okay, well, they're going to get paid out for this. And conversely, we can pull up entries that are going to get processed. So if we ever wanted to see everything that's going to get processed, time off and overtime wise, we can pull it up. And if we ever needed to stop payment on something, we can mark that for, you know, unprocessing, so to speak. So using this screen, as you can see here, we have our pay period start and end dates right there. Under selection of view, we're going to put in some settings. Now, when it comes to overtime and time off, we can only pull up one or the other at a time. So for this example, we'll just look at overtime. Okay. Now we also have this checkbox, also show paid. What that means is when that checkbox is unchecked, you know, we're going to put in our employees and click refresh to pull all in for all entries that aren't being paid, as long as this checkbox is unchecked. When we check that checkbox, we're telling the system, show us what is being paid. So let's leave it as overtime for now. Select employees. You're going to do all, and I'll leave that unchecked. I click refresh. Now nothing is shown up, meaning that there is nothing currently sitting there not going to get processed via payroll. Now if I were to check the box, also show paid, and click refresh, here I do have some entries, and these are, you know, these are the overtime entries, and they're all marked as approved. Just, you know, more information regarding the entry, the date, the shift, the reason, the hours. So these are all the entries that are going to go through to payroll. And so we see here under pay, all these boxes are checked, and under payroll, this column, we see the words process/report. That just means that it is going to be processed. You know, because we don't have any not being processed, and we do have a handful of entries that are going to get processed, let me show you how to stop payment on something first. So say for this entry with Darren here, say we needed to stop payment on it for whatever reason. All we would have to do is uncheck the pay column, or that box under the pay column header, and then click process. Now you'll see that, one, the entry has changed colors, and under payroll it says not processed. So if we needed to stop payment on an entry, we could do it here. So now let me just close out of that, and we'll go back to pay on pay. So I'm going to do overtime, all employees, click refresh. So if we ever had any entries that weren't going to get processed and we needed to force processing, see, I have this unchecked. I would just do the same thing I did, but in reverse. I'm just going to mark it as paid and then click process, and now it leaves that field. And if I click also show paid, there it is again. So, you know, that's overtime. As far as time off goes, it's the same exact steps. So here, I'll uncheck that, show time off, click refresh. I don't have any time off entries that are not going to be processed. Let's click also show paid to see what is. Okay, I don't have any time off entries, but if I did, as far as paying them and unpaying them, it would be the same steps. So are we good with pay, unpay so far before we move on? Okay, good. And when it comes to pay, unpay, like I said, this is kind of like your last minute check. For the most part, just the way the system was designed and the way people use it, you really shouldn't have that many processes that aren't going to get, or I'm sorry, not processes. You shouldn't have that many entries that you would have to manually mark for payment anyways. There are rare cases where you might have to stop payments. Yeah, exactly, very few. So for the most part, you just kind of want to make sure that, you know, when you uncheck also show paid and click refresh, it's either empty or the entries that do show up are entries that should not be processed. But, you know, there's just using the system, you know, there is a certain degree of checks and balances that go into entries before it even gets to payroll. But so, you know, using pay and unpaid, it's pretty simple. As you saw, whether you're using overtime or time off, the steps are exactly the same. It's just a matter of either checking a checkbox or unchecking a checkbox and clicking process, and then that's about it. All right. So next, what we need to do is create timesheets. Now the timesheets, what these are doing, it's essentially taking all that information and kind of locking it. It's taking what I worked, my time off, my overtime, all that stuff, and it's stamping it on a timesheet. Now keep in mind, if you know you create timesheets and then you make any adjustments or if any new information gets added, that information will not show up on the current timesheet unless you recreate it and update the information. As far as creating timesheets, though, it's pretty simple. We click on Create Timesheets, and once again, here's our pay period dates. You notice I can't change it. I'm trying, I can't. So when you click Select Employees, typically you're just going to create it for all, but for time purposes here, I'm just going to create a handful. So now I'm just going to create timesheets for these three people. I want to make sure that this checkbox is on. It processes all time off and overtime by default. You would only uncheck this if there were items that were supposed to be reported, you know, in a later pay period. So we just click Create. And, you know, if you're running this for all employees, it could take a few minutes, so just be patient. So when it's done, it's going to say Finished. Now if I go to Print Timesheets, I can actually view what those timesheets look like. So I'm just going to create one for Print Francisco's right now. I'm just going to click Print. Takes about 50. How large is your department? Okay, well, that explains it. Yeah, so it's doing a lot of processing, you know, especially if you have any payroll rules set up, anything like that. Even if you don't, you know, 15 minutes, that's about normal for a department of that size. Yep, I agree. So this timesheet, it's just showing, it's broken up into 3 sections. And when it comes to creating timesheets, as if you allowed it, in your security profile, depending on if you want your users to see it or not, once a timesheet's created, it does get posted online under Review Payroll. If you add the object sign timesheets to your users and supervisors, they can view their timesheets online, which is nice because now you don't have to print out timesheets. If someone wants to see it, they can just log on to the web portal and view their timesheets, and this is all they're going to see. So up here is just showing us what they're getting paid for regular work. They could print it technically. It's available on the web portal. The object is called Sign My Timesheet, and you'll see an X under Web under the Security Designer. So if you do give that to your user security profile, whatever, just make sure that your privileges are good to go. But yeah, so you technically don't need to print these out once you create them. Well, yeah, as long as the feature can be blocked in the web portal, as long as you don't give them that object. You would just, if it's currently checked, Sign My Timesheet, just uncheck it, and they can't do that. But some people they're trying to save paper. They would rather just have the employees view the timesheets online as opposed to having to print them out and distribute them, whatever. So it's totally up to you. You can either give it to them or you can take it away from them. It doesn't matter. But with this timesheet, it's just showing us, regular work hours, regular days off, and now under details, this is going to show time off and overtime entries. So here we have 4 overtime entries, and it even shows the pay rate, whether it's straight time, time and a half, double time, what have you, and whether it's cash or comp. This is all pulling through on the timesheet, and then we see down here, we have, worked hours and then hours scheduled. So you can see what they were scheduled for and if they took any time off, what they actually worked, and then how many hours of overtime down here. Now this last section, while it's blank right now, you'll remember I was talking a little bit about closed period adjustments, things like that. When it comes to prior period entries, this is referring to anything that someone puts in kind of late, right? So it's November 21st right now. Say I forgot to put in an overtime entry, and this might be unrealistic, but say I forgot to put in an overtime entry back in August, right, for an overtime I worked. I could put that in now, or chances are a supervisor or an admin would have to put it in for me. But what happens is anytime you add a brand new overtime or time off entry, for a prior, most likely closed period, it just gets sucked right up into the next pay period, and it would show up under here, under prior period. If someone, like my example, forgot to put in overtime from a few weeks ago, you could put it in, and it would just get kind of tacked on to, the current or the next pay cycle's timesheet, and it would show up under here, under prior period. So with prior period, you never have to worry about, if someone forgets to put something in, is it gone forever? No, it just gets added to the next cycle. So with timesheets, are we feeling good about timesheets? Do I need to go over anything? Okay, good. All right, so let's close out of that. All right, so like I said, and I can't stress this enough because it is very important, if you create timesheets, say on Saturday, and new information goes into the system, between then and Monday when you actually run payroll, the new information doesn't show up, after a timesheet's been created until you recreate the timesheet and kind of pull in all that new information or adjustments, what have you. So if you ever run a timesheet and something's missing, your best bet is just to recreate that person's timesheet to pull in any new information or adjustments. Now, the next thing you can do, this isn't required. However, some people do like this feature. You have the ability to lock or unlock payroll. So if we click on that, we see here the note. It's kind of telling us what it's doing. So it does lock the timesheets. It pretty much locks everyone out from putting in new information when you're running payroll. So some people do like this, so they know that when they run payroll, no new information is being missed. This pretty much just locks everyone out. So you would only lock payroll for the duration that you're actually running, the payroll, aka creating timesheets, running the export, doing all that stuff. You're not locking it for days at a time. You're just locking it for however long it takes you to actually complete payroll. Pretty much that time off entry that someone puts in when you lock it, it's not going to get processed into payroll. It gets locked out until you unlock it. So really a good rule of thumb is if you don't want anyone to put in new information while you are going through your payroll process, you can lock them out. And then when you're done, you can unlock it, if you want. Like I said, you don't have to use this feature. It is up to you. But it does take away certain functionality just so, new information doesn't get added while you're currently processing payroll. So if you did want to lock payroll, you could just click this lock button, and it's going to say, are you sure you want to lock the pay period? Yes. So now it's locked. Once you're done, you go through your payroll steps. Once you're done, you can unlock it. And you'll see status is now not locked. But like I said, it's not absolutely mandatory. This is just, if you want to stop people from putting in any new information while you're going through your payroll process. Okay, great. So we only have a couple of steps left. Does your department require signatures on timesheets, or are you planning on using the Sign My Timesheets function through the system for electronic signatures? No signatures? All right, well, you know what? I'm not even going to waste your time with that then. Some people, if you are required to sign your timesheets, you could use the Sign My Timesheets feature. That's fine. You're just saying sign, saying I'm okay with it, but if you're not using signatures, the next step you're going to do is your payroll export. Now, I believe you guys are in the process of getting an export, or something along those lines. Now, once you have your export built, it's pretty simple to run. You would just select it from the grid name. I have a couple in here. I'm just going to use template. We click retrieve, and now here's my payroll export. Now this export, we can, when you say dates, you mean up here, start date and end date? Those are the pay period dates, so no, they cannot be adjusted at all. That's just pulling whatever the pay period, the current pay period that we're on, it's pulling that start date and end date. Those cannot be adjusted. They're kind of set in stone. But yeah, so once you retrieve this export, you can save it to your computer, and you would do that just by clicking export. And all you're doing, you're just saving a file it's a CSV file. You can open it up in Notepad. You can, even open it up in Excel if you need to make manual changes or add anything manually. you know, some people have some information that the system just doesn't process. Such, you know, if anyone's getting additional money for, you know, uniform allowance, you know, things like that, you can open it up in Excel. You just, you know, put in the name of your, whatever you want to call it. You can save as type blank, that's fine. You just save it, and then it's just a file on your computer that you can send, you know, right to your payroll company. Or if you needed to make any adjustments, you open it up in Excel, and then from there, you just save the file in Excel as a .csv file, and your payroll company, you know, will take it in that format. And once you're done, you know, you close out. So that's pretty much it as far as, you know, running payroll. You know, that's the last step of the process. When you're done, well, so when you say manipulate the date, is that like per entry? Or in terms of like the entries you're looking for? Because like I said, you know, this will take in prior periods. You know, the pay period dates are set in stone when it comes to pulling information, but prior period entries do show up in an export as well. Well, so are you referring to adjusting the too many late entries? Well, so you know, keep in mind you can open it as far as manipulating it in the system. You kind of can't, you know, the dates. However, you know, like I said, you can open it up in Excel, make your adjustments, and then just save it again as a .csv file, and it's the same as you exporting it directly from the system. I gotcha. Okay. Well, I think I'm the one actually doing that for you. My name's Josh. You guys have been emailing me. I apologize. I've been out of the office for the last couple of weeks on-site training. But we can talk more about that, you know, kind of after this class, because I have been meaning to get back to you today. So, yeah. Once we're done with this training class, we can have a phone call to discuss some of the stuff. All right. All right, so to close payroll out, we're just going to click close payroll. Now, as you can see, it won't let you close out until timesheets are created for everyone, so I don't even have this ability right here to close out. So you got to make sure timesheets are created for everyone. So I'm just going to have to bite the bullet here and create it for everyone in the system. So just be patient so I can show you how to adjust close period entries. And while we're waiting, just a little, you know, kind of information regarding closed period adjustments. Like I said, it's for reporting purposes only. It's not going to actually affect anything in payroll. Like, so for instance, if someone gets overpaid, you're going to need to manually take care of that, you know, via payroll. This is just for keeping your reports kind of current, you know, keeping your information current and correct. But as far as making the adjustments, if you're familiar with the manage time off and manage overtime screens, you should have no problem with that. So now that those are created, let's actually close this pay period. Like I said, once you close a pay period too, always make sure that you are 100% done with that pay period before you close it. Because, you know, when you do close a pay period, you cannot reopen it That's something we would have to do at a database level, so I strongly recommend making sure that you're good to actually close the pay period before you do close payroll. So now, the last thing I'm going to show you here, close period, the close period menu. We have three items here. The first two are just adjusting entries from a prior period. So the first thing, overtime, we'll click on that. So here, like I said, if you're familiar with the manage overtime and manage time off screen, this is going to look familiar. Here we're just going to put in a date range of entries we want to pull up. You can filter by specific employees or an employee. I'll just run it for all. No, this is a little different than pay on pay. Pay on pay, you're just marking as either, okay, process it or don't process it. This is, this is to edit entries that have already been processed, from a previously closed period. So if for some reason, it slipped through the cracks, if someone got overpaid maybe for overtime, we could adjust those hours retroactively. And, like I said, it's not going to tell your payroll company, hey, this guy got overpaid 2 weeks ago, so now deduct X amount of dollars. You're going to have to do that manually. But just for record-keeping purposes, we can update that entry to reflect the new hours or anything like that. No. So this is it's not going to show up in any timesheet because this is taking place in a closed period. That period is done. This is just to make an adjustment. So if I have overtime back from July that was incorrect, I put in for 5 hours. It should have only been for 4. You would have to go back in here and adjust those hours. Now, nothing's going to happen payroll-wise. This is just for keeping your records up to date. So you could also filter by reasons. It defaults to all, but if you're looking for a specific entry, and then you can filter it by status, whether or not you want to see requests or approvals or denials or everything. I just check the box for all, for everything, and click retrieve. Now here are all my entries. These are all entries that have been processed through payroll in a period that now has been closed. So we can't reopen up that period to adjust it. We'd have to go through closed period adjustment. So say here, he got paid for 3 hours. Maybe he only worked till 9. It was only supposed to be 2 hours. I can just double click on any particular column in that row. It'll open up that form. Now you'll notice there are a lot of things grayed out here, so we can't adjust everything. We can't change the status. Obviously, we cannot change the employee or the date or the shift that it was worked on, but we can change the reason. We can adjust the hours. So now, we'll say 7 to 9, so it was only 2 hours of overtime. We could also adjust the pay type. And when we're done, we can just hit apply, and you'll see successfully processed 1 entry. So if you ever needed to adjust an entry, so we can see right here that is now saying 2 hours instead of 3. So this is only really for updating your records to reflect any changes in a closed period entry. But if someone gets overpaid or something like that, you need to manually do that, through payroll. Making an adjustment here isn't going to tell ADP, hey, deduct an hour of whatever, dollar amount, this guy was getting because he got overpaid last time. And when you're done, you just hit apply. And now with close period adjustment time off, well, guess what? It's the same exact screen, except now we're looking at time off entries. So once again, your date range, your employees, your status filters, we click retrieve. Now here are the close period entries for time off. So if I click on this one, say it wasn't supposed to be annual leave, it's supposed to be vacation. I can adjust the reason to say vacation. But now with time off, this will reflect in their bank too if you do change like the reason. say it was sick time, but we're going to change it to vacation. That sick time does go back into their bank if they have a bank, and the vacation hours will get deducted accordingly. So if we're done, we just hit apply. And now that entry gets, adjusted for our records. Like so. So we hit apply. Fine. And we close out. So that's how we adjust our overtime and time off entries from closed periods just for record keeping purposes. And the last screen under the closed period, sub menu is to print old timesheets. So if for some reason we ever needed to pull up an old timesheet, we go to print archive timesheets. And now down here it's asking for the end date of the pay period. Actually, I'm not even that far. So I go back to June. You put in the end date of the pay period that you're looking for. Select the employee you want to pull up. Click print. Let me check my my pay period end dates here. All right, I'll just pull it for July 17th. There we go. So I'm pulling up not the pay period we just worked on, but the pay period before that. This was their timesheet. So if you ever kind of lose track of your pay periods, you can find that under Admin, Payroll Setup Center, Pay Periods, and just say, okay, I'm looking for this range right here, so I'm going to put in 424 under end date right there. And when it comes to payroll, that's pretty much it. You get, if you're not using signatures, you don't need to worry about that. End of the year is for rollover stuff kind of outside the scope of this class, so you don't need to worry about that. Oh, perfect. There you go. So do you have any questions for me regarding the payroll process, running it, anything like that? Oh, right. My apologies. All right. So if you, because I'm just trying to think here. So updating an employee's pay rates, the only real reason why people, put in their pay rates here, one, if you want to, track it in the system, you can do that. Two, we do have some evaluation reports where you can, your department can see how much money you're paying out in overtime based on, everyone's overtime rates, things like that. So, my apologies. If we want to update salary information, we go to administration. We're going to leave the timesheets and payroll menu. Now we're going to go back to the admin menu. Now we're going to go to Employee Center, because this is something we need to do, per employee. We're not going to do this in bulk, right? We're going to go to Pay Info. This is where we can adjust pay-related information for, our employees specifically. So here in our Pay Info screen, here's our list of, all of our employees in the system. So to update any salary information, we're going to go to pay rates. We're going to click on our employee and we're going to go to their pay rates. And then pretty much what we would do is, whatever you have filled out, you would just type over that, right? So if you're familiar with the screen, you'll know that if you put in an annual salary, it automatically fills out the rest of this stuff for you. But if you do not, say you only have like an hourly rate and you would have to manually put in your overtime rates, all you would do is just in January, salary. Let me read the rest of that message. Yeah, so with Schedule app, 4 to 7 pay rates per employee. Those 4 to 7 pay rates, are those like if they work in a certain position or like a certain job assignment, like OIC pay, things like that? Oh, well, I mean, in the pay info screen, we have, straight time, time and a half, and double time, all in there. Now, those shift differential rates, are those employee specific, or is it, like groups of people? Groups of people. All right, well, so shift differential, you would actually put in, you can do it two ways. Right? If you want to do it based on the group, you can put in auto shift differential rules, uh, which is found under payroll rules in the payroll setup center. So based on their work group, union affiliation, contract group, however you want to call it, we can put in auto shift differential rules and tell the system, I gotcha. Yeah, so I mean, right now there's nothing in the system to kind of put in employee-specific shift differential rates. Well, you're not the only department. Don't feel bad. I mean, as far as those shift differential rates, that's something we can take a look at in a report. We can do some custom programming with that. Yeah, I mean, the only time you'd really need that is in a report, though, right? For like shift differential, trying to see how much people are getting. In a report or export, I mean. Yeah, so I wouldn't necessarily worry about putting any of that stuff here. I mean, if it's just, officers get 10 or 2%, civilians get 8%, we can always kind of hard code that into an export or report. So you don't need to worry about that because it's not a dollar amount. It's just a percentage that applies to a group of people. So we don't need to do it per employee. We can just kind of lay a blanket statement, if the person is an officer and they work this shift at this time, apply, 10% to their rate, yada, yada, yada. I mean, that's all possible. But as far as adjusting pay rates, which first brought us to this screen, come January, you do need to do it per employee. We don't have in Schedule app, you need to do it per employee. So you would just find their name, update their salary. Like I said, if they have an annual salary, I got you. Okay. All right, not a problem. So if you have hourly employees, you can just, type over it. But then keep in mind, if you don't have an annual salary, you do need to fill out overtime, time and a half, and double time manually. Now, what the most important part is, so you said, come January, you're going to need to update these. You can do it ahead of time as long as you set the effective date to that date. So anytime you put in new information, you'll see that this effective date is kind of grayed out and doesn't have a check in it. The second you add new information, you can set the effective date by checking it and saying, as of this date, this is what they're going to get. And then in comments, you could just say, 2016 salary, whatever it is, you could put that in there. And then you would just click Add to Salary History, which would then let me find someone who actually has something. All right, so say like Vanessa here, she's going to get bumped up to 55,000 come January 2017 on the 1st. I could just say 2017 salary, whoops. Then we want to click add to salary history. So now if I go to salary history, we can track all the steps, the increases in their salary, and we even see the comments, who did it. It is time stamped. Okay, when I change the salary, I update overtime with new rates. Well, so the update overtime with new rates is kind of like any overtime that they work, now on. We can update those with the new rates. You would click update OT with new rates, but that's going to take effect sooner. Right, so if I get a raise like today, and the overtime I worked, from if I have overtime put in kind of maybe in the future, we can update those overtime entries with my new rate starting now. So that's what that button is for. Yeah, so if you want to update future overtime entries, like say I get, my time and a half is $30 an hour, and I get bumped up to $35 an hour, and we want to reflect that in my overtime, we can click update OT with new rates. But that's for overtime that's already put in. Keep in mind that, as of the effective date, whenever I put in overtime, it's going to pull those new rates anyways. So this is just for existing overtime. But as far as just updating the salaries, we want to make sure we mark it as the effective date. Okay, update the salaries. You would, because I mean, you would update the salaries person by person. So you would have to also update OT with new rates for each person as well. Yeah, because I mean, you're already going to have to do it, kind of line by line anyways. So it's just one extra button click per person. That's all. But yeah, so when you set the effective date, you put in your comments, add the salary history, update overtime with new rates, and then just make sure you save it per person. A lot of people learn the hard way that this save isn't like a save all, and they go through the list of employees only to have to do it again. So just make sure you save after each employee. That's very important. But yeah, so as far as updating salaries, that's all you have to do. It's not. It might be a little time consuming for you guys. You do have a lot of people, but you're not doing it that often, right? You might only be doing it once a year, so it's really not that big of a deal, So do you have any other questions for me? Okay, good. All right, so let me close out the training, and then I can give you a call in a few minutes. I'm gonna go through my email, get my notes together. I'm not. Is there a better time to reach you? We can schedule something.